We've had a pretty amazing response to our whiskey content here at Behind the Bar, and plenty of you calling for a video about Irish whiskey, so grab your favourite bottle, pour yourself a dram, and settle in. What does make Irish whiskey different? And, crucially, did the Irish invent whiskey? As with all good Celtic stories, there's a bit going on here, so this could take a while. However, if you don't really care about history and would rather just drink the stuff, then don't worry. In part 2, we will have a look at the styles and of course actually be tasting some of these. We also have some Irish whiskey cocktails coming up soon, so if either of those take your fancy, then make sure that you've subscribed and hit that little bell so that you get notified when they come out. By some strange quirk of fate, it seems that people named Tim really seem to like this channel. On that note, I'd like to thank our awesome Patreon supporters, Tim, and to keep things fresh, Jim. Thank you. If your name is Tim or Jim or anything else really, and you'd like to support us too, there is a link below. Otherwise, on with the show. Distillation has an extremely interesting history. We'd need a very long separate episode and probably a doctorate to do it justice. But suffice to say that while fermentation, so making things like wine and beer, can happen by accident, distillation takes a little bit of scientific know-how. There are examples of it in Asia as far back as 800 BC, but in the 8th century, an Arabic alchemist named Abu Musa Jabir ibn Hayyan invented the alembic pot still, and by extension, spirituous alcohol. So raise a glass to him next time you're having a dram. Obviously this invention went through various uses and it took some time for it to spread and high-proof alcohol to actually be drunk recreationally, but what we're interested in is its arrival on the British Isles, where our beloved version, whiskey, took shape. And as much as this may anger my fellow countrymen, many signs do point to Ireland. As I've already said, distillation takes scientific know-how, and the people who had that education in those days were monks. Irish monks were also pretty well travelled, and the story goes that they brought the art of distillation back home from continental Europe as early as the 12th century. They quite quickly realised that there was a bit more demand for a warming dram than for distilled perfumes in Ireland. But these spirits would have been unaged and flavoured with herbs, so quite different from what we drink now. They were known as uisce bretha, which is Irish Gaelic for aqua vitae or water of life. In fact, the first written reference to it is in 1405, which was recording the death of a head clansman who died after taking a surfeit of aqua vitae at Christmas time. So let that be a lesson to us all. The monks spread this over to Scotland, and so actually Islay would have been one of the first places because it lies in between Ireland and Scotland, and it quickly took hold. The first written reference in Scotland is in 1494 when Friar John Corr bought enough malt to make about 1,500 bottles of whiskey, so it's fair to say that it was pretty common practice by then. Now, of course, both the Scottish and the Irish have been known to spin a good yarn and will probably be fighting over this forevermore, but what is certain is that King James I granted a licence to distill, which is widely thought to be the first in the world, to the landowner in Bushmills, Ireland in 1608. And here we see the birth of the whiskey distilling industry as we know it. Now another blow to my country's ego. Irish whiskey was really considered to be a far superior product for most of its history. In fact, one theory as to how the Irish whiskey got the E was so it could be differentiated from the less well-regarded Scottish product. It was consistent and mellow, which are two things that its Scottish counterpart was certainly not at that point. So, what happened? Well, the 1800s was not an easy time for the Emerald Isle. With the total abstinence campaign, you had the Great Famine and mass emigration. But it was really the 1900s which actually decimated the industry. You had the First World War and all of its economic ramifications, and then that was followed closely by the Irish War of Independence, which effectively locked them out of the British Commonwealth market. So they lost Britain, Canada, Australia, India, amongst others. And then Prohibition hit in the States, which was their largest export market. The Scottish could still ship to Canada, making running their whiskey into the States much easier, whereas the Irish were both reluctant and actually practically unable to ship their product over. And somewhat ironically, their stellar reputation led to them being the #1 choice for bootleggers to just stick on the labels of their caramel-coloured methylated spirit, and so slowly the image of Irish whiskey disintegrated. Meanwhile, the Scottish had enthusiastically embraced the latest evolution in distilling science, which was the continuous column or coffee still. Funnily enough, actually, the first man to come up with this idea was a Scotsman, Robert Stein, but it was then an Irishman, Aeneas Coffey, who perfected it. This definitely deserves its own video. It's actually one of the things which has a massive impact on the flavour of a spirit and is actually quite often overlooked. But basically, column stills can produce a much larger volume of a much cleaner spirit than pot stills. So the Irish whiskey industry was pretty loath to use it, as they felt it compromised the quality of their whiskey, because the flip side of a clean spirit is often a less flavourful one. However, the crafty Scots saw an answer to their image problem and started blending this light and smooth spirit with their rougher single malts to produce a spirit suitable for a wider audience, known as blended whiskey. Many of these brands, such as Duras and Johnnie Walkers and Bell's, are still beloved worldwide today. The luck of the Irish did seem to have run out. By the mid-1950s, there were only 5 distilleries left in Ireland, down from close to 100 in its heyday. So these 5 distilleries decided to join forces and they formed the Irish Distillers Limited, which was bought out by Pernod Ricard in 1988. They consolidated their distilling efforts to the point where Irish whiskey was actually only being made out of 2 distilleries, and Jameson really became the flagship brand that they rallied around. We will get more into styles later, so stay tuned, but basically Jameson's was a good horse to back. It's light and easygoing, which does lead to it being many bartenders' shot of choice. Well, that and the fact that they throw a great party. It also led though to people seeing Irish whiskey as quite one-dimensional. But at least it was back in the consciousness again. Also in the 1980s, a man named John Teeling took over the Cooley distillery, and with the monopoly broken, the Renaissance started in earnest. Cooley actually specialised in contract distilling, and so many brands of Irish whiskey you saw popping up in the 1990s and 2000s were made there, much the same way that a lot of bourbon brands come out of only a couple of distilleries in the States. When Beam Suntory bought out Cooley though, they didn't have much interest in continuing to do that. Unfortunately, this did see some brands fall by the wayside, but others decided it was time to build their own distilleries. As with all things whiskey, the aging process means that these kinds of changes will take a while to be felt, so a lot of Irish whiskey on the market now will still have been made at Cooley, but with the distillery count back up to a healthy 18, including a Diageo one, and with many more planned, it is clear that Irish whiskey is set for world domination once more. So, now you know the history of Irish whiskey, please do join me next time when I'll be having a look at styles and actually having a taste through some of these. Until then, slange.